You had this crazy story about this kid who showed up at your doorstep, couldn't speak English, didn't have any money to speak of, but he just wanted to box. Tell me that story again.
I was in the gym one Saturday. I noticed this guy came in the gym who was not clearly not dressed, for the boxing gym. So I knew he was out of place, and he was trying to get my attention, but I was working. And eventually, practice ended with that athlete, and I walked over, and he walked over to me, and I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Are you Coach Bruce?" I said, "I am Coach Bruce." He said, "I have a young man on the phone that would like to speak to you. Would you be willing to talk to him?" And this is like completely out of the blue with no pre. So I said, "Sure." And he put me on the phone, and I looked down at the phone, and there was this handsome boy with his long eyelashes and with a big smile. And he started talking to me, very fast and in an excited voice, but I couldn't understand one word he said. And, I didn't want to be a jerk, and so I waited a little bit till there was like pause, and I handed the phone back to the man. I said, what's going on here? What's happening? He says, "Coach, this young man's asking that if he gets to your gym, will you train him?" And I said, "Well, where does he live?" He says he lives in a small town in Romania, and he wants to come to America to be a professional boxer. And I said, "Well, how did he find me?" He said, he heard, his coach had found me through when I was coaching one of the U.S. teams abroad. And I said, "If he can get here, I'll train him, and tell him that." And he said, and he looked in the phone, he said some words in Romanian, and the man thanked me and left. And that's the last I thought about it. About 7 or 8 months later, I'm in the gym, and I look up, and we have a little area where you walk in. There's a window that looks into the gym from like the vestibule, and I looked up, and I saw this boy's face. I mean, I looked up, and the moment I saw him, I recognized his face from the phone. And I looked, and he looked at me, and his big smile came across his face, and he came into the gym, and he walked in. He had he was disheveled. He had shoe with his pinky toe, where the pinky toe was all worn out. His socks were gray. He had shorts on. He had a t-shirt that was raggedy, all stretched around the collar. He didn't look, he had a backpack with a tear in the bottom. And he walked up to me, and he put his hand out, and he said, "Me champion." And we talked, and it found out that this boy had saved up money for 7 months to buy a one-way ticket to the United States. He got off at the airport he thought was closest to my gym, which is right outside Washington, D.C., so he got off at this airport, Dulles. It took him a day and a half to get from Dulles Airport to my gym. He was telling me that story, and he showed up at the gym. He had no money and no plan, but the desire to be a fighter. For the next couple of days, I said, "Well, just come to the gym." And every day I'd come to the gym in the morning, and he would already be there. And I figured, this kid's really eager. Come to find out, he was sleeping outside the gym. And then he would wake up in the morning and come over and be the first one there. And we started training. He was gifted. He had the things, Jim, that you can't coach in. And he was a really hard worker. He was a really good, sweet kid. We were developing him and had him for a year or so, and then started getting him some fights, and 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, 8-0. And he's winning. He's not winning. He's crushing people. And, I was taking him around to different gyms to test him out, and I had him spar with, Gervonta Davis and all kinds of Keyshawn, all the top guys in the world. And this kid was hanging in. I eventually moved him into my house because he didn't have a place. And I eventually had him bring his wife and his daughter over to the United States because they wanted to come. And then they ended up staying in my house. I taught his daughter how to, the alphabet. All this time, this kid was in the gym training, and we were building towards something. And I was doing it for all the right reasons, right? I was doing it because here was this kid that needed help, that he was responsive to the help that was being given to him. We were succeeding, and he was coachable and all those things. We are now at the level where he's beginning to fight for for some sizable belts and things like that. So we were fighting for the IBF Intercontinental. We fought for the IBO International belt. He knocked the dude out in like 3 rounds. Then we fought for the IBF Intercontinental. And he fought the guy who was the previous world champion and won that fight decisively. Then during this time, Jim, and I want everybody to hear this part of the story because it's a little bit of a cautionary tale. You know, being successful and knowing how to handle success are 2 different things. And I can only speak for myself, but there have been in my younger ages when I was successful, I was not always mature enough or smart enough or wise enough to handle the success I was having. And I also didn't understand who were my friends and who weren't. So, and I was always telling Alex, make sure you're hanging out with the right people. Because I am, coach, don't worry about me. Don't worry about it, I got it. Okay, you're hanging out with the right people. Yes, sir, hanging out with the right people. So one day I'm in the gym and now the training is serious and everything that we're looking at is serious. I see Alex, this kid's name is Alex, and I see him and there's this other kid from Eastern Europe in there, and I go, what is this guy doing here in the gym? He goes, oh, he's a friend of mine. I go, well, how is he a friend of yours? He goes, oh, he just says he's a friend, and guy came over, and the moment the guy came over, I felt uncomfortable. There was something about the guy that my instincts went up, and I just said, Alex, I'm uncomfortable with this. Don't be hanging out with this guy. I got it. And since we didn't have a fight immediately scheduled, we were sort of in the gym working, but it wasn't that intense. He could, So he started hanging out with this guy, and they started hanging out with this guy's friends. And then he said, I'm going to go to New York for the weekend. I said, go, okay, be careful. And he would, and what I realized, Jimmy, is that he was getting pulled in the wrong direction. We fought one more time, and we are now the mandatory challenger for the world title with Jerwin and Tejas for the IBF world title. He's ranked the number 1 challenger in the world in the IBF. He's the number 1 in the IBO. He's number 6 in the so he's ranked in the top 5 in all the sanctioning body. I'm on the phone negotiating for his first world title fight with Jerwin and Tejas' people from the Philippines. I get a phone call from Alex's wife. So, hi, she goes, Coach Bruce in broken English. She goes, Alex in trouble. And I go, what's he in trouble? He goes, he's been arrested. He's in Virginia in trouble. And I go, well, what's he been arrested for? She said, I don't know. So I called a lawyer buddy of mine, and they researched it. And he'd been arrested for credit card fraud. So I drove down to Virginia, down to where he was in Southern Virginia. Long story short was these friends of his that he'd become friends with were stealing credit card. When I think of credit card fraud, I think of I steal your credit card and I use it before you know about it, right? Apparently what these guys do is they steal information. They make these chips and then they load these chips onto cards, and then they have cards basically with other people's information. They use them until they're shut down. And the guys he was friends with were involved in the Wawa breach. These guys had breached Wawa, which is a convenience store all over the chain, giant breach. And they were making gift cards. And then every time, they would and they were giving him cards and I was telling him the whole time, I said, you're just their pet. You're just the champ. These guys want to go to dinner with you, be seen with you, want to hang out with you, but they're not your friends. We're your friends here. Be careful, I got it. And what they were doing was giving him these cards to use, and he was using them. And he got arrested because every single time you use the card, it's a separate account apparently when you get charged. And the FBI had been following this group of guys that he was being friends with, and tapped their phones and getting conversations with Alex. So this is a funny story. So I go down to the courthouse, Jim, and I'm walking across the parking lot into this courthouse in Southern Virginia. I'm talking about way down there, 2-3 hours from where I live. And as I get out of my car, these other 2 guys across the parking lot get out of the car at the exact same time. And I start walking to this building, this place I'd never been before, and I can see that these guys aren't actually walking toward the building, but they're walking towards me. And I get out and I walk and I stop and I'm like maybe 15, 20 yards away. I said, "Can I help you guys? What's going on here?" They go, guy looks at me and goes, "Mr. Babashan?" And I go, like I'm totally taken back. I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Special Agent Leak from the FBI. Could we speak to you?" I go, "What?" So we go in the back and they explain everything to me, that, what has happened, this whole breakdown and everything like that. And, this is how they knew my name, because they were part of this phone tap. And I'm like totally out of my element. I'm totally freaked out. I'm Mr. Straight down the middle guy, and here I am. And, when you live your life as a coach, you try and live with high ideals. And here I'm in this thing. And I'm worried for Alex. I'm uncomfortable with the whole situation. And we go through a process. And eventually, they come to find out that the state drops the case against Alex, but it was still reported to immigration. And we get a letter from immigration saying, "You have to leave the country. You're being removed from the country." And I remember trying to figure out what to do with the world title fight. This has all happened simultaneously, and I realized I can't do anything about it. And so I let them know. And I remember driving Alex to the airport, and on his final taking him away, and he looked over at me, and this, by now he's learned some English, and he looked over at me, he goes, "Did I kill my own?" He said, "Did I kill my own dream?" And I said, "Yeah, you killed your dream." We were on a plane. And here's a kid who came from nothing with a pure heart, came over here, did everything right, got with the wrong people. It's a cautionary tale. Everywhere I go, when people ask, when I go speak in front of teams, or whenever I'm asked to come talk to different, programs, college programs, I talk about decisions. I talk about the choices we make, and how you have to make the right choices and surrounding yourself with the right people. And the consequences, and sometimes we don't think of these. This happened. This is real. The rags to riches. We are in the riches discussion, and in this period of time, and then his daughter had grown up here. She no longer really spoke Romanian. She spoke English. They had to pick and they had to transplant him. I stay in touch with Alex. He's trying to get back in the United States. I try and help him. But like anything else in life, Jim, when you're climbing to the top, especially in sports, there's a window of opportunity, and sometimes not only have you climbed, but the window's open for you. The circumstances are right, the conditions are right, the moment is right. Yeah, and just there's a window for you and your style and the person you are to slip through that window. And I talked to him not too long ago, and he goes, "I want to come back." I said, "You're 5 years older, son. You haven't fought in 5 years." I said, I don't want to, crush your dream or anything, but, I don't think that's going to happen. But if you get here, I'll train you. I said, I will start back at the beginning. If you get here, I'll train you. But I don't think that right now the window of opportunity is the same. He's older. The athletes have changed, the circumstances have changed, and it is a much more difficult path. It's a much more difficult path.